Fox Business's Charlie Gasparino. You saw him a moment ago. He's here, as is Kristina. Partsinevelos has been covering this story. And Dan Shaffer, Shaffer Asset Management, also here in the studio. Welcome all. You've been on this, Kristina. So we'll start with you. As Harvey said, there are a number of issues on the timing of the tweet that have been raised for Elon Musk. And
True.
People you've been talking to?
But the timing, think of it, it came in a few hours after the Financial Times announced that Saudi, the wealth fund there, got in on this stock. And that's a huge vote of confidence. And I think this is based off of a few people I've spoken to, that's the vote of confidence that Elon Musk needs to prove that he can raise the money. So the big question is, and we can discuss it right now, where is the extra funding going to go come from in order for the company to go private?
And he has to have had that, at least according to Harvey, because he used the term funding secured. He has to have had that as of yesterday, Charlie.
I would say, I mean, think about what Harvey's saying here. He's not quite saying that. What he's saying is, look at the way the story developed yesterday. Stock is trading flat. There was a leak to the Financial Times that they got the Saudis in at 3 to 5% of the company. Stock goes up a little bit. Who leaked that story? And then comes the next thing where he comes out and literally minutes later, after that story was leaked, he came out and said, I'm getting funding from the outside. I mean, I think what Harvey is suggesting, and I know Harvey pretty well, is that there is at least, some smoke here. I'm not saying there's fire.
Right, we need to know more.
No, wait a second. To a stock manipulation case. And no, that's what he's saying, because what he said before that was that we know that Elon Musk was at war with the shorts. Right. We know that he has a reason to stick it to them, and they got stuck yesterday.
Red flags for you, Dan?
And those are all red flags, particularly when there's a leak. And what he did, it was very weird. I mean, I've never seen anything like that before.
This is not normal protocol at all, especially after the 10Q gets filed and then comes out with this kind of an announcement. Everything is very strange, and I think we're in the early stages of this chapter of what's going to come out of this.
What do you still want to know then?
Well, I want to know about the funding, of course, but I also want to know why he says he's thinking about it, but yet hasn't discussed it with the board, or they claim that the board, discussed it. But why would he come out with a tweet like this? Now, Elon is known for speaking off the top of his head.
Yeah.
And we also know that President Trump does the same thing. So in Elon's mind, and I'm trying to put myself in an inventor's mind, somebody who thinks off the cuff, I think he kind of said a little prematurely, but I think he wants to get out. His SpaceX program doesn't have to deal with investors, hold on, Charlie. It doesn't have to deal with a public investors, Wall Street.
Yeah.
And I think he's fed up with that, because I watched this Twitter, and I see these guys who
he went about it the wrong way.
But President Trump is not regulated by the Securities and Exchange Commission. And I think the problem this guy has is that normal protocol, particularly, and I'll tell you, that leak of the FT story, I think is a tell, because that's so weird.
Yes.
That usually
about the Saudi sovereign wealth fund.
And then he comes out with his
precisely.
thing.
Right.
Exactly. We have one more. We have Andrew Stoltman, who's also with the Chicago Securities attorney, so that'll get into some of the legal issues. Andrew, welcome. I want to get your view on this. Charlie brought up the idea of stock manipulation in the Harvey Pitt interview, and he also, Harvey, in another part of that interview, did talk about the timing of the announcement in terms of funding being secured. Harvey said that it could be a false statement that Mr. Musk made yesterday if he didn't actually have the funding secured at $420 a share when he made that statement on Twitter. But any red flags that have been raised for you from what you've heard, what you've seen, what you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, it was breathtakingly irresponsible for him to send that tweet out. It's just not something that the head of a publicly traded company should do. He's exposed himself and his company to a tsunami of potential private lawsuits and regulatory actions, and there was really no reason to do it. And yes, there is a chance that it could be securities fraud. If he was trying to crush the shorts, that's a problem. If he didn't actually have the funding already secured, then that could be manipulation. So I just don't know why he'd do it. It's really stupid for a very smart guy to do.
Everybody else can weigh in on it, Andrew. So what do we need to know from Elon Musk now? If you were asking him questions, what does he need to prove? What does he need to tell us if we're investigating this? What would be your questions for him?
I think, number one, we have to see if the funding was already in place. And number two, and most importantly, what did the board know and when did they know it? Because if this isn't the sort of thing that he got pre-board approval from, that's a huge problem. There needed to be an 8K that had been submitted. There needs to be a special committee appointed by the board to look into this. If none of that stuff was done, I think Mr. Musk has a serious problem on his hands.
It's interesting, Kristina, too, speaking of timing, is that he made the announcement, Elon Musk, on Twitter, right? And then the company came out with its own announcement, but the two were not not simultaneous.
And they're not the same either.
No, and it came out, and the same thing
Right.
with the board. Only 6 out of 9 members signed it too. I'm skeptical of even just that, and there's been complaints that the board itself is not very independent. And to the previous point just mentioned now about regulation, you need to know exactly when he received the funding to make sure that he is not going to be charged for any fraud.
I would say this: no board is independent. Just look at what's going on at CBS right now. But I think that's why you have these rules in place. And what was striking to me is that his tweet was different than what was sort of what was released.
Yeah,
right.
A little bit. Well, they added to it in the statement.
It was hedged. The release basically said we are not there yet, or I'm paraphrasing, but we're not. We're considering this. It's
he was ahead of the board.
Right.
He was ahead. He was right in front.
In this modern kind of world that we live in, what I think is interesting, and I don't know that a lot of people do this until yesterday, say, well, are you even allowed to make this announcement on Twitter?
You are.
The answer is you are, but you must have told. You must have said that you would. And Tesla did that. Tesla said that we might make announcements about our company on Twitter. Yeah, but you're supposed to make a this is my understanding.
Right.
Andrew, you weigh in on this real quick. I think this is right. You're supposed to make a simultaneous company announcement, and the announcement from the company came, after the tweet. It wasn't at the same time. Is that an issue?
That's right. Yeah, under Reg FD, it's supposed to be a disclosure at the same time across multiple different channels. I guess I just keep coming back to, where's the board? I mean, we know that Mr. Musk has a long history of sending these problematic tweets out. Remember the one he sent during the cave rescue about the guy being a child molester? Well, he also made the comment about the company going bankrupt on April Fool's Day. Yes. You need to take his Twitter mechanism away because he can't responsibly use it.
I would say this is more serious, and I'll say it this way. I don't remember the last Reg FD case that was actually brought. I mean, they don't bring those cases a lot because there's a lot of gray area and wiggle room. I think the real problem he has on this is in the secured financing. If that's a material misstatement, that's a problem.
If he has an issue, that might be the biggest issue. Putting that in the tweet.
Don't you think, though, that he would have had funding? He wouldn't have come out with a tweet like that if he has nothing.
He better.
Yes, exactly. And just to point out to the viewers, FD stands for fair disclosure.
He better, and he better have documentation.
But where is it? I mean, I'm telling you that most people, most of the banks around that are getting called right now, don't know where it's coming from.
Well, the Saudis are selling a lot of Canadian assets. I saw that this morning.
Maybe that's where he gets.
I want to talk about another topic because anytime Gasparino's here and I can talk about insider trading with Gasparino, I like to do that because we've had some doozies over the years.